Hello and welcome back to my channel. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, is a pivotal piece of civil rights legislation in the United States that was enacted to prohibit discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life. Since its passage in 1990, the ADA has reshaped how society addresses accessibility, inclusion, and equality. The Act covers employment, education, transportation, and access to public and private spaces open to the general public. Its influence is profound, not only for people with disabilities, but also for the broader fabric of American society. The struggle for disability rights in the United States has a long and courageous history. In the decades leading up to the passage of the ADA, people with disabilities and their allies organized demonstrations, sit-ins, and advocacy campaigns to secure equal rights and opportunities. Many of these efforts were inspired by the broader civil rights movements that sought equality for women and racial minorities. We have to recognize that without the African American civil rights movement, the disability rights movement would not have happened. Without Wade Blank going to that one action, he would have never dedicated his life to the cause of the movement. I do not believe we would be where we are without leaders like him. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was a predecessor to the ADA, particularly Section 504, which prohibited discrimination against people with disabilities in programs receiving federal funding. However, there were gaps in legal protections, and discrimination persisted, especially in employment and public accommodations. The push for comprehensive legislation intensified in the 1980s as disability activists, organizations, and bipartisan supporters in Congress worked to create a law that would guarantee civil rights for individuals with disabilities. Their efforts culminated in the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was signed into law by President George H.W. Bush on July 26, 1990, with Evan Kemp Jr. on his left and Justin Dart Jr. on his right. The ADA is a comprehensive law comprised of 5 titles, each addressing specific areas of public life. Title 1 prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities in job application procedures, hiring, firing, advancement, compensation, job training, and other aspects of employment. Employers with 15 or more employees must provide reasonable accommodations to employees with disabilities, unless doing so would cause undue hardship. Reasonable accommodation might include adjustments to the work environment, modified work schedules, or specialized equipment. It doesn't mean that they can ruin said equipment. Title II ensures that people with disabilities have equal access to services, programs, and activities offered by state and local governments. This includes public education, transportation, recreation, healthcare, social services, courts, voting, and town meetings. Governments are required to make reasonable modifications to policies and provide auxiliary aids and services when necessary. Title III mandates that privately owned places of public accommodation, such as restaurants, hotels, theaters, retail stores, doctor's offices, and parks, must be accessible to people with disabilities. It also applies to commercial facilities and requires newly constructed or altered buildings to comply with ADA standards for accessible design. Additionally, businesses must make reasonable modifications to policies and practices and provide auxiliary aids and services. Title IV requires telephone and internet companies to provide a system that allows individuals with hearing or speech disabilities to communicate over the telephone. This includes the provision of telecommunication relay services, TRS, which enable people who use text telephones or other assistive devices to communicate with voice telephone users. Emergency services must also be accessible. Title V contains various provisions relating to the ADA as a whole, including its relationship to other laws, state immunity, and insurance. It also includes an anti-retaliation clause, protecting individuals who exercise their rights under the ADA from coercion, threats, or discrimination. The ADA defines a person with a disability as someone who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, has a record of such an impairment, is regarded as having such an impairment. Major life activities include, but are not limited to, walking, seeing, hearing, speaking, breathing, working, learning, and caring for oneself. The ADA's protections also apply to people who have a history of disability or who are perceived by others as having a disability, even if they do not in fact have a qualifying impairment. Tune in Friday for part 2, where I discuss various court decisions and attempts to roll back the Americans with Disabilities Act. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I will see you soon.
No.